there. Today we're going to work on number 10, radical notes, solving multi-step radical equations. Your steps to solve these radical equations is the first thing you want to do is isolate the radical. That means get it all by itself. Then you're going to square both sides, so both sides of the equal sign, and then solve for the remaining variable. Remember, if a square root is equal to a negative number, that means no solution. Okay, so let's look at this first one here. Okay, the first thing we want to do is isolate our radical. So I'm looking at this first one. If I want to isolate my radical, all of this is underneath the radical. That whole piece is. So it's already by itself. So the next step I want to do is square both sides. So if I square that side, I also want to square this side. By squaring my left side of the equal, that just gets rid of that radical. So then I'm left with x plus 4 equals 5 squared is 25. If we want to get that x by itself, I'm going to subtract 4 from both sides, and I get x equals 21. All right, let's move on to number 2. The first thing we want to do is isolate what's under the radical. So right now, all of this is under the radical. So that tells me that I can just go ahead and square both sides right off the bat. So I'm square this side, I'm going to square that side. By squaring my left side, that gets rid of the square root. And I'm left with 2x equals 4 squared is 16. Now I'm going to let our number together, so those are being multiplied. So I'm going to do the opposite. I'm going to divide, and I get x equals 8. Let's look at number 3. Okay, when we look at number 3, I want just what's under my radical. If I want to isolate that, that's just that piece right there. So I need to get rid of what's on the outside of that, which is a minus 3. So I'm going to get rid of minus 3. I'm going to add 3. So I still have the square root of 3x under the radical equals 6 plus 3 is 9. Okay, now when I look, if I'm isolating what's under the radical, that is all underneath the radical. So to get rid of that, I'm going to square. So I'm going to square this side, and if I square that side, I'm going to also square my right side. That gets rid of my radical. So I have 3x equals 81. And then a letter and a number are together, so I'm going to divide by 3. And I get x equals 27. Okay, let's try the next side. We're going to do the same thing. First thing we want to do is isolate what's under the radical, which is just that stuff. So anything that is outside of that, we have to get rid of first. Right now there's a plus 3, so to get rid of plus 3, I'm going to subtract 3. So now I still have the square root of x plus 1 underneath the radical, and 5 minus 3 is 2. Because that square above it, or sorry, not the square above it, the radical above it, square root, I'm going to square it to get rid of that. And whatever I do to one side, I have to do to the other. So I squared this side. So now I'm left with x plus 1 equals 4. To get rid of that 1 and get x by itself, I'm going to subtract 1, and I get x equals 3. Let's look at number 6. I'm going to start the same way. Isolate what's under the radical. So just these pieces are under the radical. Okay, we use reverse PEMDAS in order to decide if we multiply or if we add or subtract first. Remember, in PEMDAS, adding and subtracting comes last, so we want to add and subtract first. So because I have a minus 5, to get rid of that, I'm going to say plus 5. So I have 3 times the square root of x minus 4 under the radical, and that's going to equal negative 18. Okay, the next thing I want to do is isolate the radical again. This is underneath the radical. Okay, so I still have 3 times that, so I got to get rid of your multiply by 3. So get rid of multiply by 3, I'm going to divide by 3. So I still have the x minus 4. I'm going to set that equal negative 18 divided by 3 is going to give me a negative 6. Remember, you can't have a negative or a square root of something equal to a negative number. And when that happens, you just call that no solution. So we're going to say no solution for this one. Let's try looking at number 7. First step, isolate. So I'm going to do right there is what's underneath the radical. I get my left side, my right side. I'm going to do reverse PEMDAS. So I have a positive 10 to start with. 10 minus 10 times the square root of y minus 10 equals negative 60. So because I have that 10 first, if you don't have an addition or a subtraction in front of it, you know it's positive. So the opposite of a positive 10 would be a negative 10. So I'm going to subtract 10 on both sides. So that leaves me with a negative 10 times y minus 10 under my radical equals negative 70. Okay, the next thing I want to do, if I still am isolating my radical, here's my radical that's being isolated. Okay, it's negative 10 times that, so I'm going to do the opposite. So I'm going to divide by negative 10. If I divide by negative 10 over here, I'm going to divide by negative 10 on the other side. Now I have y minus 10 equals a positive 7. So now because that's turning into a positive number, we can keep going. It's no longer negative. So now I'm going to square my left side and square my right side. That gets rid of my radical on my left, which leaves me with y minus 10 equals 49. And to get rid of that 10, I'm going to add 10, add 10. I get y equals 59. Okay, let's look at number 8. First thing is to isolate this radical. Okay, so we got a couple things going. We got addition and we have multiplication on that left-hand side. Let's get rid of the addition first. So I'm going to subtract 3. Subtract 3. That leaves me with 2 times the square root of 10y minus 1 equals 14. I want only what's under my radical, which is just this left, so I got to get rid of that 2 times. So to get rid of multiply by 2, I'm going to divide by 2. So I have the square root of 10y minus 1 equals 7. I'm going to square both sides because that's the only thing I have left that's underneath my radical. So I have 10y minus 1 equals 49. Add 1, add 1. So I have 10y equals 50. Because those are being multiplied, I'm going to divide. And get y equals 5. Okay, let's try number 9. That's underneath the radical, so we got to get rid of what's not underneath that radical, which in this case is the minus 1. So we're going to add 1, add 1. So I'm left with the square root of x plus 3 equals 8. All of this is underneath the radical, so I can go ahead and square it. So if I square this side, I also have to square this side. This gets rid of your square root, and I get x plus 3 equals 64. Then I subtract 3, and I get x equals 61. And our last one, number 10. first thing, I only want what's under the radical. There it is. I'm going to do reverse PEMDAS, so I'm going to do my addition and subtraction first. So right now that minus 5 has to go first, so I'm going to add 5. So I have 3 times the square root of 3x plus 1 equals 15. This is under the radical. So I still need to get rid of that 3 times. So I'm going to divide by 3, divide by 3. So I still have the square root of 3x plus 1. 15 divided by 3 is 5. That's under the radical, so I'm going to square this side and square the right side too. That gets rid of this. So I have 3x plus 1 equals 25. Subtract 1. 3x equals 24. Divide by 3, divide by 3. And x equals 8. All right, you have everything you need to work on your assignment for number 10.